Hey guys, it's Mario here back with another quick video, and in this one we're going to go over a frequently asked question about changing your workout plan when you're transitioning from that mass building phase into a cutting phase. So when you go from, let's say, a caloric surplus into a deficit in order for you to minimize the amount of body fat. So the goal is changing from essentially putting on a lot of mass to maintaining the maximum amount of muscle mass you can while losing body fat. And for a beginner, you might actually be able to build a substantial amount of muscle mass when you're in that deficit. But for most intermediate and advanced lifters, the best we can do is basically maintain our muscle mass. So should the workout be changing at all? And the short answer for this is no. If your workout plan is good, if your workout plan is providing great results in terms of gaining strength, gaining muscle mass, you shouldn't be changing it, because the same thing that you use to build muscle and gain mass is the best thing you should be doing for keeping that mass, right? So that's the thing where a lot of people are getting into all sorts of myths out there that the high reps are for burning fat, or they make a tremendous amount of changes, adding a ton of different exercise and all these other things which have negative consequences when you're leaning down. So what should be changing when you're going, in terms of training, when you're going from that phase of building mass into that phase of losing fat? And I can tell you from my experience, the biggest change is really in that workout volume. So reps times sets times weight, that is workout volume. And as you diet down, you're gonna notice that you can't recover from the same amount of volume as you were doing in that bulking phase. And I can see from my current cut that I'm in, the amount of volume that I was doing in a bulk, I could maintain that for like about the 6-7 week mark. But afterwards, I noticed that if I continue on the same path, I would be constantly overreaching and I would be at a risk of overtraining. So I had to reintroduce more deloads, or I had to reduce that amount of volume that I was doing. So instead of doing 5 times 5, let's say on my main lifts, I would reduce for some of those weeks to be 3 times 5. Right, so 3 sets of 5 instead of 5 sets of 5. And that is a simple example how you need to modulate and regulate that volume as you're leaning down, as the calories get lower. So the volume is kind of scaled with the calories, and this is very individual. This will depend on whatever your recovery ability is and how you respond to dieting. But in a general sense, you should be working toward trying to maintain as maximum intensity as you can. Intensity meaning the amount of weight you're using. So you should be still using pretty heavy weight on your fat loss, that as heavy as you can, and try to keep and hold on to that as much as you can, because that's going to help you retain the maximum amount of muscle mass. As well, obviously, having that workout volume at a decent amount, but you can still recover from it. And that's a big key here, is recovery, because that's the biggest thing that changes when you're going from a bulk where there's like an abundance of calories, you're just recovering very fast, you're pretty much doing everything right. And when you're on a fat loss diet, I mean, sometimes it's a difference of 700-800,000 calories. And in that way, when it's like, as soon as you go like halfway into the cut, you'll definitely notice those symptoms, like you're more stressed, you recover slower, and all the other factors related to dieting in terms of like hormonal changes, like lowering your testosterone, you feel a little bit worse, carbs get a little bit lower. So for some people, when the carb gets a little bit lower, you get a little bit more depressed as well, and all these other things like can definitely influence how you feel day to day, and also how good you can perform in the gym. So it's really necessary not to beat yourself up too hard when you're going into that cut, and kind of anticipate that this phase will be more likely a reduction in volume while you try to maintain the maximum intensity as you can. So that's a big difference there. And another note that I really want to point out here is that you shouldn't be changing your exercises while you're in that fat loss phase, because that will generate a massive amount of muscle damage. Think about it last time when you changed a big compound movement and introduced a new movement. So let's say you were doing leg pressing and all of a sudden you decided to do lunges for some reason, and you probably the next morning you felt it. It generated a ton of delayed onset muscle soreness, and you just felt like the movement wasn't in that groove, you just didn't feel it. And that is because your body needs time to adjust to a new movement. And I would not recommend changing any compound movements while you're in that fat loss phase, if that fat loss phase is 16 weeks, someone 21 weeks, 24, might be even 32, depending on how long you decided to cut. I would say really stick to your compound movements, maybe add a little bit of variety in those isolation movements just to keep it as interesting as possible. but I'm kind of skeptical doing that as well. So I basically try to maintain the movements that I did on a bulk and try to maintain the amount of weight that I was doing, possibly even increase the weight. In some cases that happens, in some cases it doesn't happen, but I really don't like to change a lot of movements because that generates a lot of muscle damage, and I want that repeated bout effect to work for me. So repeated bout effect is an effect when you're doing the same movement over and over and over again, and with that movement, it doesn't generate as much muscle damage as it used to. It doesn't generate as much as soreness. So you might be thinking now, well, aren't I supposed to be doing that? Well, not really, because our goal is to improve in terms of how much weight we're doing. That's our new stimulus that we want to adapt to. It's not that we simply want to create muscle damage. I mean, if you want to create muscle damage, just go run a marathon and you'll see how much muscle you're going to build and how sore you will be. So barely, you probably wouldn't even be able to walk, or you'd die halfway there if you're like me. So that is the point. And another quick tip here is try to not go to muscle failure when you're in that fat loss stage, and really try to shy away from failure, like train maybe a rep shy of failure, just because that muscle failure, going to that extreme and really giving it all you got, can generate a lot of negative effects and a lot of fatigue when it comes to your recovery ability. So really, I would say on a fat loss stage, it comes down to management of fatigue, to make sure that you can express your strength, to be able to maintain the maximum amount of muscle mass you have. The workout plan isn't changing. I know that is that you can say a simple answer for that, but there's a lot more nuance to it. There's a lot more things going on, as you can see, and it really comes down to experience as well, where you're listening to your body. You know when you're feeling those overreaching, overtraining effects, and then you're like, okay, it's time to really scale it back and just do maybe more frequent deloads. Instead of every 5th or 6th week, maybe you do a deload every 3rd or 4th week, and it doesn't really matter because that's going to be very individual. There's no rule, right? All these things that I'm talking about right now are just guidelines, so they're not specific rules. They're not like the 10 commandments that I'm giving you here. So they're just guidelines for you to optimize your training, get really good results, and if you do apply this, that's pretty much guaranteed. So I hope you guys enjoyed. A couple of tips here. Should you be changing your workout plan when you're gonna cut? Short answer, no. Long answer, it's a little bit more complicated, but pretty much no. So hope you enjoyed, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. As always, read your comments, reply to all of them, and make sure to hit that subscribe button right in the face to support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.